to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, and welcome to this quiet hour when the day can loosen its hold on you and the mind may begin to settle like dust in a still room. Tonight, your story will wander gently down Flower Street after rain to a little boutique where every window glows softly, every shelf seems to breathe, and even the smallest objects are ready to rest. Let your body be comfortable now. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands uncurl. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to solve. The world outside can wait for a while, patient and hushed, as you follow the sound of rainwater slipping from leaf to leaf and the slow silver shine of puddles in the lamplight. Take a deep breath in, as though you are breathing the clean scent of wet stone, jasmine, and lavender soap, and breathe out, letting the day drift away from you. Again, breathe in gently with no effort, and breathe out a little slower. Imagine a narrow street after a spring rain. The bricks are dark and polished, the flower boxes shine. Drops cling to the awnings like strings of tiny glass beads. Every color is softer now, rinsed and deepened, and the air feels cool against the cheeks, almost sweet. As you move along this street in your imagination, your footsteps become lighter. The thoughts that followed you here begin to fall behind. The windows glow, the rain clouds part, a moon pale as cream rises over the rooftops. And now, as your breathing becomes steady and calm, you may allow the story to carry itself. You do not have to hold it. You do not have to follow every detail. You may simply listen as it unfolds, softly and slowly, like a ribbon being drawn through open fingers. On Flower Street, after rain, there was a boutique that never seemed to open too early and never seemed to close too late. It stood between a baker's narrow blue door and a tiny shop that sold hand-painted teacups. Its sign hung from a curved iron bracket, swinging very slightly whenever the evening breeze came wandering down from the hill. The sign was painted a warm, faded rose with cream-colored letters that read, "The Sleepy Boutique." Beneath the lettering, someone had painted a little silver moon resting inside the cup of a tulip. By daylight, people often passed the boutique without noticing it at all. They were busy with errands, baskets, umbrellas, letters, and lists. They hurried by while the shop windows reflected clouds and carts and the fluttering wings of pigeons. But after rain, when Flower Street grew quiet, the boutique seemed to wake in its own gentle way. Not loudly, never all at once. It woke as a lamp wakes beneath a shade, as a flower opens after being closed all afternoon, as a cat opens one eye, then settles deeper into sleep. The evening had just turned blue when a traveler came to Flower Street. She was not in a hurry. Her coat was soft and dark from the rain, and a small satchel rested against her hip. She had been walking for some time, though she could not quite remember when the walk had begun to feel like a dream. The city behind her had been full of wheels, bells, voices, and dripping eaves. But Flower Street was quieter. Here the rain seemed to have left a spell behind. Water threaded along the gutters in clear little streams. The stones shone black and violet and amber beneath the lamps. Geraniums drooped contentedly from window boxes, their petals refreshed by rain. A trail of ivy climbed a brick wall and held hundreds of tiny drops, each one catching the light like a thought too small to trouble anyone. The traveler paused beneath the boutique's awning. The awning was striped in pale green and ivory, and along its edge hung a row of droplets that fell one by one into a copper bowl placed just beneath. Each drop made a small, hollow sound. Plink, then silence. Plink, then silence again. It was such a gentle rhythm that the traveler stood still, without meaning to, listening as though the shop itself were breathing. Behind the glass, the boutique glowed with amber light. There were folded shawls in colors of dusk and moss. There were jars filled with buttons like seeds, spools of thread wound in shades of fog, honey, lilac, and moonlight. There were paper boxes tied with velvet ribbon, little carved birds on a shelf, slippers with embroidered stars, and umbrellas drying upside down in a brass stand. Near the back of the shop, a curtain of pale linen stirred, though no one seemed to move behind it. Then the door opened inward by itself, slowly and without a sound. Warm air flowed out, scented with chamomile, cedar wood, clean cotton, and something floral the traveler could not quite name. It was like the scent of a garden after sunset, when petals have closed and leaves are still wet from rain. She stepped inside. A bell above the door gave the softest chime. Not a bright, ringing bell, but a low silver note, as if it were being heard from under a pillow. The sound trembled once in the room and faded into the shelves. The boutique was larger than it had seemed from the street, though not in any surprising way. It simply made room for what was needed. Its ceiling was low and crossed with dark wooden beams. Lamps hung from hooks, their shades made of frosted glass shaped like flowers. A round rug lay in the middle of the floor, woven with sleepy blues and greens. The floorboards creaked warmly beneath the traveler's shoes, not in protest, but in greeting. Behind the counter sat an elderly woman with silver hair braided over one shoulder. She wore a cardigan the color of warm oatmeal and spectacles on a chain. A book lay open in front of her, though she was not reading. Her hands were folded over the page, and beside her slept a large white cat with gray ears, curled in the shape of a comma. "Good evening," said the woman very softly. Her voice was like a folded blanket. The traveler returned the greeting, though she did so in a whisper because the whole shop seemed to be sleeping lightly. The woman smiled. "The rain has brought you in." It was not a question, and so the traveler did not answer at once. She looked down and saw that her shoes had left no wet marks on the polished floorboards. Somehow the rain had remained outside, or perhaps the boutique had dried it away before it could trouble anyone. "I was only walking," the traveler said. "Most people are," said the woman, "until they notice they are tired." The white cat opened its eyes, which were pale green and mild. It blinked at the traveler, then closed them again, as if it had decided she was no danger to the evening. The woman rose from her chair. She was small, but she moved with the unhurried grace of someone who had never needed to rush. "You may look around," she said. "Nothing here asks to be chosen quickly." The traveler nodded and began to wander through the boutique. Near the front window stood a display of umbrellas, each one different. One was the color of a rainy sky just before dawn. One was pale yellow like custard in a china bowl. One had tiny painted violets around its edge. Another was transparent, but the glassy fabric held faint silver lines that shifted like streams on a map. The traveler touched the handle of the violet umbrella, and a memory came to her, not a sharp memory, not one that belonged entirely to her, but the feeling of walking in childhood beneath someone taller's umbrella, hearing rain drum overhead, while a warm hand held hers. The memory was so soft that it did not hurt. It came, gave its small kindness, and passed on. Farther into the shop were shelves of folded things, nightgowns wrapped in tissue paper, robes with deep pockets, socks thick enough for winter mornings. The traveler brushed her fingers over a shawl that looked gray at first, then blue, then a soft purple when the lamplight found it. It was woven so loosely and tenderly that it seemed made not from wool, but from the evening itself. "That one is for verandas," said the woman from behind the counter, "and for watching rain leave the garden." The traveler smiled and moved on. There was a table of candles, though none were burning. Each candle was poured into a small ceramic cup. Their labels were handwritten: linden window, warm quilt, rain on ferns, pear tree at dusk, moonlit linen. The traveler lifted the candle called Rain on Ferns, and for a moment the whole shop seemed greener. She could almost hear drops sliding down wide leaves in a shadowed garden. She could almost feel moss underfoot. At the back of the boutique, near the linen curtain, stood a wooden cabinet with many small drawers. Each drawer had a porcelain knob painted with a different flower: rose, poppy, violet, daisy, lavender, clover, snowdrop. The traveler touched the knob marked lavender, and the drawer opened a little by itself. Inside were handkerchiefs, folded into perfect squares and tied with pale thread. They smelled faintly of sun and soap, though no sunlight had entered the shop for hours. Above the cabinet a clock hung on the wall. Its face was not marked with numbers, but with tiny painted flowers arranged in a circle. The hands moved slowly over them, pointing first to bluebell, then to lily, then to a small white blossom the traveler did not recognize. It did not tick. Instead, every so often it sighed. The traveler listened. The whole boutique seemed full of such sounds. The faint settling of fabric, the purr of the sleeping cat, rainwater dripping outside, the careful hush of drawers that opened and closed themselves by only a finger's width, as if they were breathing in sleep. The woman came to stand beside the traveler. "It is nearly the hour of folding," she said. "What is folded?" asked the traveler. "Whatever has been left open too long." The traveler looked at the woman, uncertain whether to understand this as a practical matter or something more delicate. The woman simply smiled and drew back the linen curtain. Beyond it was a small room with a low work table. On the table lay scraps of fabric, ribbon, paper, flowers pressed between pages, and a shallow bowl filled with rainwater. A lamp stood in the center, shaded by green glass. On one wall hung many little shelves, each holding bundles wrapped in cloth. A rain-washed window looked out into a courtyard. The courtyard was barely larger than a room paved with square stones darkened by water. In its center grew a plum tree, slender and black-branched, with leaves that trembled whenever drops fell from the roof. Beneath the tree was a round iron table and 2 chairs. A teapot steamed there, though no one had gone outside to prepare it. The woman opened a drawer beneath the work table and took out a square of pale blue cloth. "Some people bring coats to mend," she said. "Some bring ribbons to match. Some bring gloves missing their partners, and some bring the ends of long days." The traveler watched as the woman laid the cloth flat and smoothed it with both hands. "It can be useful," the woman continued, "to fold the day before sleeping. Not tightly, not to hide it away, just enough that it can rest." From somewhere in the shop came a small rustling, like a sigh from a sleeve. The traveler thought of the day she had carried with her, its errands, its small worries, its unfinished sentences, its places where she had held herself too firmly. The day did feel unfolded, spread around her in uneven corners. The woman dipped her fingers into the bowl of rainwater and touched the cloth lightly. The dampness did not spread. Instead, it shimmered. Then she placed a sprig of dried lavender in the center, folded one corner over it, then another and another, until the cloth made a small, soft parcel. She held it out. The traveler took it carefully. It weighed almost nothing, but her hands felt warmer around it. "There," said the woman, "only if you wish." The traveler closed her fingers around the parcel. She did wish, though she could not say exactly what she wished for. Rest, perhaps, or the permission to stop trying to gather every loose thread. The cat appeared in the doorway, though it had seemed deeply asleep only moments before. It crossed the room with slow importance, brushed against the traveler's skirt, then stepped through a little arched door near the baseboard that had not been visible until then. The traveler bent slightly to look. Beyond the little door was not a cupboard, as one might expect, but a miniature hallway lit by a line of pearl lamps. The cat's tail disappeared around a corner, a scent of warm milk and clover drifted out. The woman chuckled quietly. Mallow keeps his own hours. The traveler looked again, and the little door was only a panel of wood, smooth and closed. Nothing in the boutique insisted on being believed. That was its charm. Its wonders came and went gently, like reflections on water. The woman led the traveler back into the main shop. Outside, Flower Street had grown darker. The lamps along the pavement were lit, and their glow trembled in every puddle. The baker's blue door was closed. The teacup shop had drawn its curtains. The whole street smelled of rain and warm bread, cooling somewhere nearby. A few quiet customers had entered the boutique. No bell had announced them. They moved slowly from shelf to shelf, speaking in murmurs, if they spoke at all. There was a man with a brown umbrella who stood for a long time before a row of slippers. There was a young woman in a green scarf, choosing thread to mend the hem of a dress. There was a child half asleep in a chair near the window, while an older sister examined jars of buttons. None of them seemed hurried. None seemed quite surprised by the shop. Perhaps everyone who found the boutique after rain had already crossed some soft border in themselves. The traveler sat in an armchair near the window. Its cushion held her gently, and the blue shawl from the shelf lay folded over one arm, though she did not remember carrying it there. The woman brought her tea in a cup thin as a flower petal. It tasted of chamomile, honey, and pear. From the chair, the traveler watched the shop settle into its evening rhythm. The man with the brown umbrella chose a pair of slippers lined in fleece. When he put them beneath his arm, his face changed in the smallest way, as though he had just remembered a fireplace in a house he loved. The young woman matched her thread to a spool, the color of rain, dark ivy. The spool rolled toward her palm before she reached for it, and she laughed under her breath. The child in the chair had fallen asleep completely. The older sister chose a glass button shaped like a tiny moon and placed it on the counter, where it shone with a gentle milky light. The woman wrapped it in tissue paper and tied it with a bit of blue string. All the while, the rainwater outside continued its delicate dripping from awnings and roofs. The sound made time feel wide and soft. The traveler sipped her tea. The small parcel of folded day rested in her lap. Little by little, the edges of the room seemed to blur, not because she was losing sight of them, but because everything felt less separate than before. The lamps, the shelves, the jars, the shawls, the quiet customers, the old woman, the cat, the rain, the street, the traveler herself. All of it seemed woven from the same patient thread. At the far end of the shop, a music box began to play. No one had opened it. The melody was slow and nearly familiar. It turned in a small circle, rose like breath, and settled again. The traveler felt her eyelids grow heavier. She did not sleep, not yet, but she entered the pleasant place just before sleep, where the body is sure of the chair beneath it, and the mind begins to loosen its bright knots. The woman moved moved through the boutique, lowering lamps by the smallest degrees. She did not make the room dark, she only made it more golden. The windows became mirrors, reflecting shelves and flowers, and the pale oval of the traveler's cup. Outside, the street lamps shone through the glass in soft halos. Mallow the cat returned from wherever he had been and leapt without effort onto the windowsill. He sat there like a small white cloud, looking out at Flower Street. His reflection looked back at him from the glass, and the two cats blinked in perfect quiet. The clock with flower marks gave a deeper sigh. The hour of folding had begun. The woman set out a large basket near the counter. One by one she collected things that had been left open. A book of fabric samples, a drawer of ribbons, a paper box filled with lace, a parasol whose cream-colored canopy had been spread to dry. Each object received her attention. Each was closed, rolled, folded, or wrapped with care. The traveler watched, soothed by the simplicity of it. Open things were not scolded for being open. They were not rushed into order. They were handled kindly according to their nature. The ribbons were wound around cards. The lace was laid between tissue. The parasol was closed with a faint whisper of silk. Then very slowly the shelves seemed to fold themselves. A stack of napkins straightened its corners. A row of socks leaned into neater pairs. The shawls relaxed into smooth layers. Even the shadows folded deeper beneath the tables. The traveler's thoughts followed. The conversation she had replayed in her mind began to fold into quiet. The errand not completed folded into tomorrow. The worry without a name folded into the soft blue cloth in her lap. Not gone, not solved, simply resting. Across the shop, the child stirred, and the older sister lifted the wrapped moon button from the counter. They left together, their steps muffled by the rug. The bell above the door made that low silver note again, and Flower Street received them into its lamp-lit hush. The man with the slippers left next, then the woman with the ivy thread. The boutique grew stiller. The traveler wondered whether she should go too, but the thought drifted away before it became a decision. The old woman came to the chair near the window and sat opposite her with a basket of mending. She took up a stocking, threaded a needle, and began to stitch. Her movements were small and even. "Does the shop always feel this peaceful?" the traveler asked. The woman did not look up. "Only when those inside it are ready for peace." The traveler considered this. Outside, a carriage passed at the far end of the street, its wheels hushing through shallow water. Somewhere a shutter closed. Somewhere a late bird gave a sleepy note from under an eave. The woman's needle passed in and out, drawing thread through wool. "Long ago," she said, "this street was a lane between gardens, before the shops, before the paving stones, before the lamps. After rain, the flowers leaned so low over the path that anyone walking here would brush against them and carry the scent home. People began calling it Flower Street before it was even a street at all." The traveler listened, warm cup in her hands. Then came the houses, then the little shops, bakers and binders, milliners and cobblers, sellers of tea and paper and candles. But the rain remembered the gardens, so after every shower, it brings back a little of what was here before. The woman tied off the thread with a tiny knot. That is why the street grows quiet after rain. It is listening to its own roots. The traveler looked out through the glass. The flower boxes seemed fuller in the lamplight. Leaves trembled in the mild breeze. In the puddle below the window, the boutique's sign reflected upside down, the painted moon resting in its tulip. She imagined the old lane beneath the street, lined with wet blossoms. She imagined all the footsteps that had passed there, the hems of dresses, the boots of gardeners, the paws of cats, the wheels of carts, the soft hush of rain over everything. The boutique felt older now and kinder. The woman rose again and nodded toward the back room. The courtyard will be pleasant for a little while. The traveler followed her through the linen curtain and out a narrow glass door. The courtyard smelled of plum leaves, wet stone, and tea. The sky above was a dark square between rooftops, and in it hung the moon, not bright but gentle, wrapped in a thin veil of cloud. They sat at the iron table beneath the plum tree. The teapot was warm. The cups were waiting. The rain had stopped completely, but drops still fell from the leaves now and then. Each drop tapped the table, the stone, or the rim of a cup, making a different small sound. It was like listening to a lullaby played by the tree itself. Mallow appeared on the wall, walking along the bricks with perfect balance. He paused beneath the moon, looked down at the two figures at the table, then continued toward a neighboring roof. The old woman poured tea. Steam curled upward and disappeared into the damp air. For a while, neither spoke. There are silences that feel empty and silences that feel full. This one was full of cooling rooftops, sleeping flowers, the patient drip of rain, the quiet breathing of the city behind its closed curtains, full of all the things that do not need to be said because the body understands them first. The traveler held the cup in both hands and felt its warmth seep into her palms. On the table beside the teapot lay a small brass key. It was simple and old-fashioned, with a bow shaped like a leaf. The traveler noticed it but did not ask. The woman saw her looking. "That is for the dream cabinet." "Is there such a thing?" asked the traveler. "Sometimes." The woman lifted the key and held it up. In the moonlight, it did not shine sharply. It glowed as if remembering sunlight. "The dream cabinet is not for dreams that arrive on their own," she said. "Those know their way. It is for the little scraps that are too tender to become dreams without help. A kindness seen from a window, a color in the evening sky, the smell of rain on a coat, a song almost remembered. We store them for people who have forgotten how to sleep easily." She placed the key in the traveler's palm. It was warm. The traveler did not know what to do, but the woman stood and led her back into the shop. The lamps were lower now, and the main room seemed wider in the hush. At the far wall, between the candle table and the cabinet of flower-knobbed drawers, there stood a narrow cupboard the traveler was certain had not been there before. It was made of dark wood polished by many hands. Its doors were carved with vines, bees, small moons, and sleeping birds with tucked heads. At its center was a keyhole shaped like a leaf. The traveler placed the key into the lock. It turned without a sound. Inside the cabinet were shelves lined with blue velvet. On each shelf rested small glass bottles, no larger than thimbles, stoppered with cork. Some held pale light, some held fog, some seemed to hold nothing at all until the traveler leaned close, and then she saw motion inside them, the flutter of curtains, the gleam of a wet path, the slow passing of clouds. The woman chose an empty bottle from the lowest shelf. "What shall be kept from this evening?" she asked. The traveler thought of the awning drops falling into the copper bowl, the violet umbrella, the sighing clock, the blue shawl, the courtyard and the plum tree, Mallow's green eyes, the folded parcel in her lap. Before she could answer, the empty bottle began to fill. A faint glow gathered inside it, soft as the reflection of lamplight in a puddle. Then came a swirl of lavender gray, a speck of silver, a tiny dark shape that might have been a cat, and finally the green of a leaf after rain. The woman corked the bottle and placed it on the shelf. "There," she said, "a dream, if needed." The cabinet doors closed themselves gently. The key vanished from the traveler's hand, though its warmth remained. The old woman turned toward the counter, and the traveler understood that the boutique was nearing sleep. Not closing exactly. A shop like this did not close in the ordinary way. It simply drew itself inward. The lamps dimmed until each one looked like a moon behind mist. The candles on the table tucked their scents back beneath their lids. The spools of thread rested in their rows. The umbrellas leaned together like companions under one story. The traveler stood beside the counter while the woman wrapped the blue shawl in brown paper. Around it she tied a ribbon, the color of rain clouds lit by sunset. "For verandas," the woman reminded her, "and for watching rain leave the garden." The traveler reached for her purse, but the woman shook her head. "Some things are paid for by arriving tired enough to receive them." The traveler did not argue. The boutique did not seem like a place where ordinary bargaining would make sense. She took the parcel under one arm. The folded day still rested in her pocket now, though she did not recall putting it there. It was light, lighter than before. At the door, she turned back. The old woman had returned to her chair behind the counter. The book lay open again. Mallow was asleep beside it, though one gray ear twitched as if he were listening to distant rain. The clock pointed to a small painted flower that looked like a white star. "Will I find this place again?" the traveler asked. The woman smiled. "After rain?" If you walk slowly, then the door opened and the traveler stepped onto Flower Street. The air outside was cool and clean. The rain had ended so fully that the silence after it seemed to glow. Above the rooftops, the clouds were thinning, and a few stars had appeared. In the windows of the sleeping shops, the lamps were low. The puddles held pieces of moon. The traveler walked without hurry. Under her arm, the wrapped shawl was soft and warm. In her pocket, the folded day rested quietly. With each step, she felt less like someone leaving a shop and more like someone entering a dream that had been waiting kindly at the edge of the evening. Flower Street stretched ahead, narrow and shining. The petals in the window boxes nodded in the breeze. The sign of the boutique swung once behind her, so lightly that it made no sound. When she glanced back, the windows still glowed, but faintly, as though seen through rain. Though the air was clear, she continued on. The street curved past the baker's blue door, past the teacup shop, past a little gate covered in ivy. The city beyond was quiet now. Even the distant bells seemed wrapped in cloth. Her footsteps softened. The parcel grew lighter. The night opened around her, deep and blue and full of rest. By the time she reached the end of Flower Street, she felt that something inside her had been folded with care, not hidden, not forgotten, only laid down for the night. And somewhere behind her, in the small boutique after rain, the old woman lowered the final lamp. The room settled. The shawls slept on their shelves. The candles dreamed their garden scents. The umbrellas dried beneath the awning, remembering silver weather. The clock sighed over its flowers. Mallow curled more tightly beside the open book. Outside, one last drop fell from the sign into the copper bowl. Plink. Then all was still, and now the story grows quieter too. The traveler walks on beneath the gentle moon, carrying softness with her, carrying warmth, carrying nothing that needs to be opened before morning. Her breathing is slow, her shoulders are loose, her hands are warm. Flower Street fades into blue distance, and the boutique becomes a small golden memory, safe behind rain-washed glass. The night is calm. The city is resting. The flowers have closed their petals. The moon keeps watch. And every thought may fold itself now, gently, gently, until there is only comfort and darkness and the soft place where dreams begin. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.